Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for an advanced copy of this statement. 18 months on from the referendum result, the Prime Minister has scraped through phase one of the negotiations. Scraped through after 18 months. 2 months later than planned, with many of the key aspects of phase one still not clear. This weekend, Cabinet members have managed to contradict each other. Indeed, some have managed to go even further and contradict themselves. Mr. Speaker, we respect the result of the referendum, but due to this government's shambolic negotiations, it's getting increasingly difficult to believe this is a government that is indeed even capable of negotiating a good deal for Britain. These negotiations, Mr. Speaker, are vital for people's jobs and for our economy. Our future prosperity depends on getting them right. So let us hope that today we can elicit some very uncharacteristic clarity from the Prime Minister. Firstly, on the financial statement, can the Prime Minister confirm the figure quoted by the Secretary of State for exiting the EU, that we will be paying between 35 and 39 billion in an exit payment? And after this weekend's confusion, can the Prime Minister clarify whether this payment is conditional on securing a final deal, as the Brexit Secretary said, or whether it's an obligation for the UK to pay, as the Chancellor said, or it's only part of a conditional? If so, how much? When can the Prime Minister publish a full breakdown of the settlement? Whether she agrees that the settlement should be audited by the National Audit Office and the the Office of Budget Responsibility. Finally, on the financial settlement, does the Prime Minister yet have any indication of what level of ongoing payment the UK will be making to the EU for ongoing participation in EU joint programmes and for ongoing membership of EU agencies? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of citizens' rights, can the Prime Minister confirm that they have agreed that the European Court of Justice will oversee the deal on EU citizens' rights for the next 8 years, and that the UK courts will have due regard to ECJ decisions indefinitely? Can the Prime Minister therefore update the House on her red line that there is no future role for the ECJ and what this means for trade negotiations? Importantly for British citizens living in European Union countries, can the Prime Minister confirm the government's negotiations mean they will maintain all of their existing rights indefinitely? And will she now, today, confirm that UK pensions will continue to be paid and uprated for all British citizens in the future? Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, on the complex question of the Irish border, again, Mr. Speaker, there are conflicting statements, this time between the Brexit Secretary and, of course, the Brexit Secretary. So, can the Prime Minister confirm whether the deal reached last week is legally enforceable or not? Article 46 of the published agreement seems pretty clear that, and I quote, "it must be upheld in all circumstances, irrespective of the nature of any future agreement between the European Union and the UK." And what does regulatory alignment mean? Does it mean the exact same rules or different rules with similar outcomes? And if the latter, who would adjudicate if those different rules are similar enough or not? Which policy areas are covered, and how long does regulatory alignment last? Is it only for transition or for the implementation period, as the Prime Minister calls it, or is it permanent? Finally, on the question of deadlines. Mr. Speaker, this government wasted time on phase one, partially with the general election, which I'm sure the Prime Minister now regrets calling. But the government originally aimed for phase one negotiations to be complete in October. Then everything was ready for an announcement on Monday, and ultimately we saw a rather fudged agreement late last week. So, has this experience given the Prime Minister reason to consider dropping the unnecessary exit date deadline of the 29th of March 2019 from the EU withdrawal bill? Because I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, the whole House, and indeed I think probably the whole country, would rather get the best possible deal a little bit later if that meant a better deal for people's jobs and the economy. The second phase of negotiations will have a huge impact on our relationship with our largest trading partner. The Brexit Secretary committed to deliver, and I quote, the exact same benefits as now. Does that remain the government's aims? I assume it does, as the Prime Minister just said the UK will maintain full alignment with those rules of the internal market and the customs union. And I've left the trickiest question till last. Can the Prime Minister explain what the Brexit Secretary actually meant when he said that he wanted to have a trade relationships in the future which are CETA plus plus plus? Can she explain what on earth he was talking about? Mr. Speaker, I hope the Foreign Secretary is trying to bring clarity to the situation. I wish the Prime Minister well in adjudicating that debate. I hope the next crucial phase of negotiations are not punctuated by posturing, delays and disarray that have characterised the first phase, and I'm sure the whole country would welcome clarity from the Prime Minister on exactly what has just been agreed.